Alright, so I played Warframe World Peace, the newest update, both straight after it dropped and after the operation started, which has a few patches of rebalancing and bug fixes. So my initial impression of the new additions to the main gameplay were very positive. The more I look at how the game was designed years ago, with a lot of modes getting grandfathered in, and how Warframe plays after the 1999 update, and especially now after the World Peace, it's a world of difference. Cache hunts, dynamic objectives, boss fights both at the end and the smaller one in the middle. Cool little buffs or pickups like that rocket launcher for completing stages. Probably something else. The way it works in the newer content feels simply better than the rest of the older content, and I wish DE would rework how the older missions actually operate. Take exterminates for example. It was extremely tedious back when they've had a fixed number of targets, and some of them might get stuck in the middle or the beginning of missions, and then you have to go to the end again, and then they respawn, and this constant bouncing back and forth. That got fixed and improved. But it's still old, it's still tedious. Some of those missions take far too long, and aside from respecting my own time, there truly isn't a gameplay reason to rush anything. But now, having the Perita Rebellion, I can see exactly how good it could be. And I want to push myself to get the number up as fast as I can, because I can get more loot that way. Descendia is also fairly enjoyable, although it's more so down to the variety. On paper it's simply a worse version of the Doviri circuit. However, the tile set is a hell of a lot cooler, and the missions can change a lot more. For example, there's one about blowing up boxes. There's no enemies, you just blow up boxes. But that's kind of fun for a change of pace. Same with racing, you just have a racing missions there. And also a few other outliers. Meanwhile, Doviri feels a lot more static in comparison, but it also grows enemy levels fast and gives those power-ups every round. Also, it's simply endless, making the whole thing more enjoyable as you get stronger and stronger. So I believe Descendia will get a bit boring after a bit, kinda like Veilbreaker. It's very fun at first, but after a few weeks there is very little enthusiasm for it. Also, I just wanted to mention that the Hell Cathedral tile set is really cool. However, that second tile set, the one with a barren planet, is grey. It's so much brown and grey, and I get why, but it doesn't mean I have to like it. The whole thing is simply unappealing to look at. I'm not sure what could be done. I feel like they could have just done so much more. If there's one thing I will always say what Warframe has in spades, then it's style. And the style is simply lacking here. Then the messenger additions with the 3 new characters, that's okay. It's a bit complicated to talk about, because the more I go through it, the more I loathe Warframe's story, because the cinematic quests are simply failing horribly at delivering any semblance of coherent narrative. Somehow, in a giant paradox, the Warframe story somehow both shows and tells too much and too little in the exact wrong ways. So when the discussion comes up in this little messenger minigame, I simply have no idea what any of those story bits they talk about are. I went through these things, I don't know what actually happened. Do I care? Well, the more I talk, the more I do, the more I want to learn and know, but only to remember how miserable it is trying to understand how going through the story actually feels, and that kills all the enthusiasm there. And by the way, the new quest is the same way. There are a couple of emotional moments in that quest, nearly entirely thanks to the music. It's great music, by the way, as always, but there is so very much of the typical Warframe shenanigans. But that's neither here nor there. I always consider story to be borderline irrelevant when it comes to Warframe. The real complaint I have about this new content is the speed of acquisition of the new stuff. The frame and the weapons are okay, especially with that commonplace now system of being able to buy all the blueprints with the mission drops. That's a thing ever since Lua got that survival update, and DE keeps chugging that along. It's a great idea, much better than something like the original Equinox farm, which is a nightmare. But there is more. So the Focus School got the new Super Moves update, but those need to be bought with the 3 new special currencies. After completing the Rebellion missions about somewhere between 10 and 20 times, maybe more, I only just got enough to buy one of those upgrades. And that's considering what the quest gives half of that already. So do the math. And someone might come out and say, Oh, but that's new content. It's focus content. That's always meant to be slow. Yeah, but the thing to keep in mind is what Focus Farm was always passive. You just put that lens on your equipment and do whatever hell you want. Together with the stuff, whatever you were gonna do anyway. You didn't need to go out and do a dedicated Focus Farm. Especially after all the amazing changes since Duviri. Meanwhile, these 3 new currencies are only obtained in the Rebellion missions, which means hours upon hours to unlock this one cool looking thing. And that thing doesn't actually even do that much. There are some good bonuses like getting more power strength with Zenuric, but after so much grinding it feels like a rip-off. Besides, the actual damage output of that thing is not exactly impressive after so many years of constant power creep. Millions of damage are no longer as impressive as they once were. Maybe if it was released a couple of years ago, but right now it just... well, it's not nothing, but you get the idea. Aside from that, there is also the bullet sponge complaint. Specifically on the steel path, but it's not like I'm happy with the bosses at the best of times. So, DE reworked how damage works for the newer bosses, things like acolytes, liches, archons, and now the rebellion bosses. Which means they take a lot more damage, but also have so much more health. Which was especially apparent after they've patched the boss of Hunhullus, the first rebellion mode. Originally I did it a couple of times as Excalibur. It took maybe a couple of minutes, but it was alright. Then I brought Valkyr, which got buffed like crazy recently by the way. She is truly overpowered. And when I was doing that, I basically one-shot each crumb of health. Days after that, DE made it so... well, I'll just say I didn't optimize my equipment for the boss fight, and post that screenshot. My Hydroid wasn't having much fun. This reminds me of Prelate, the Deimos boss, which was the Night Wave mission at one point. It takes too stupidly long and there's too much health. I still didn't complete it, despite having basically everything in the game. These new sentient bosses feel the similar way. It's nowhere near as bad. Don't get the wrong idea, but it's the same point. The second one is just a big dull ball of health. But the first one, the EIDOLONS style boss, is just far too much health. It was fine before, but it isn't now, after that patch. I mean, it's not as horrible as the planes, with the idiotic lure mechanic or the annoying magnetic procs every 5 seconds or that shield which only operator can damage. Needless to say, I despise EIDOLONS, and this was the much better version of it. So there's that at least. But I hate it when I can only use the broken equipment to do the content. Playing only one thing which works in the current patch feels awful, and I'll basically avoid doing the first and the second mission of the Rebellion because of it. Again, unless I'm using Valkyr. And I also forgot to mention, Hunhullus has an arcwing segment at the end, and it feels either untested or unfinished. Boss keeps shooting at nothing and covering from time to time. It also again takes far too long, but considering it's arcwing, so you can't use frame or focus abilities, I am literally using the best arc gun in the game, modded with double arcanes, and just... it's as good as it could be, and it still takes multiple magazines to bring it down. Again, to absolutely zero resistance. The boss doesn't even aim at me. It just kind of floats there. It's not good. Besides, the Warframe fight, Vanguard of Predator Rebellion, is a lot more fun anyway. It's clearly unbalanced, with Ember borderline one-shotting my Excalibur, while all the other frames barely dipped in the shields. Ash even performed finishers on me which did absolutely nothing. Not even a single point of damage. It honestly looked like it missed, but you know, the animation played, and so whatever. It's clearly broken. But still a lot more fun than shooting at the same thing for 20 minutes and running out of your magazines. So, that's the old piece. I have to admit, I was a little bit hyped and I was a little bit disappointed. But it's not too much, and besides, I was also pleasantly surprised with how fun those timed rebellion missions turned out to be, which is better in the long run for the game anyway. And I also could mention the small shroom update on Fortuna from a little while ago. The mushroom theme frame was added, and to get it there's a small new syndicate, pretty much just a single dude in it. He's got his own bounties, so you start in a hub, you go through these randomly generated maps instead of open world, with a couple of objectives on the way. If you manage to do everything right, there's a bonus reward. This was clearly a little update specifically to keep people playing. And also this was the update when they quietly added arcanes to arc guns. which uses two, one secondary, one primary, instead of anything dedicated to the arc guns themselves, thankfully. So the mushroom caves, I did adore how they look. The underground glowing mushroom coupled together with Corpus Tech, it's great, but the actual additions were underbaked, especially the countless mycological currencies. I doubt too many people will relate, but this reminded me of trolls and Nerubians during Wrath of the Lich King. Both were teased to be huge, with entire zones underground and huge raids, especially with Nerubians. But it ended up being just a couple of dungeons. Still pretty cool dungeons, but overall it obviously could have been so much more. Same with these mushroom caverns. I could imagine a whole other Orb Vallis-sized open world down there, instead of this. But oh well, it's still enjoyable enough, and I do have a soft spot for easily obtainable bonus objectives.